So that's cool. All right, here we go. Kieran. So opening page. So let's just check what program you're in, Kieran. You're
political science.
So you're in poli-sci.
Yeah.
Right, and then you are taking this course in order to do what?
It was just basically understand teaching styles, or not even teaching styles, because I didn't know really teaching styles when I started. It was more just understand teaching in some respect in order to transfer it to coaching.
So you're only going to take this course, or you're going to take other ones in the teaching area?
I think I might take other ones.
Okay.
I haven't quite decided yet, because I'm not sure if I want to do the minor in the teachable study in PE, have my social studies, because if I wanted to be a teacher, I want to be a high school teacher. So socials and PE. I just haven't decided if I want to add that extra semester or two to my degree, because I'd be done next Christmas. But obviously,
and the PE courses would be the other things that you'd have to take, such as motor learning
and anatomy and those ones. So those are some of those are first semester things only and whatnot. So I just have to time those.
But even if you went to PDP with just social studies, you could indicate you've got a cluster of courses in phys ed, which it won't get you into the methods class that happens in the PDP one, but it would give you ability to volunteer and then teach PE.
Okay.
And particularly in middle school, they would look at that. Oh, could you do PE?
Yeah.
So like 452 would be particularly good for that.
Yeah.
250 with adapted phys ed would be good for that. So they're the courses that we've tried to work with kids.
Okay.
And then the SPA ones just supplement that with ideas that help you see content broader than soccer.
Yeah.
Right?
Which is useful.
Yeah, no, but I mean, you can't end up with a minor, but you can end up with some of it.
Yeah.
So you create a cluster
for an interview or a resume.
And the social studies gets you into the PDP program if the GPA is high enough. The only problem with social studies is there's a lot of applicants for social studies. So the GPA tends to be up like 6.9, 6.8 type of thing.
Okay.
Because there's so many.
Yeah.
Because it's an easier one to get.
Yeah.
From many different degrees rather than just English degree.
No. Yeah. Totally.
All right. Good. All right. So this first page, I haven't actually looked at it, so I don't know what you chose. So you chose in your personal reflection. Open up, Emily. Oh, good. Which skill were you focusing on? Networking?
Networking based on the use of technological resources. Because as I've figured out throughout this class, I'm not particularly adept at the education side of using technology. As far as networking in person, that is what I've highlighted as one of my skills. Like when I'm in groups of people and I'm talking and whatnot, I don't really have a problem with that. But using like portfolios and forums and collections of ideas and work like this, if I get to start using that, whether it's for coaching and sending to parents and other coaches throughout the city, technical directors, whatnot, or other people in classes in education, if I end up doing the minor, that'll probably just both raise my standard of my learning, and then also sort of puts the onus on me to get past probably as you've experienced, the biggest demon I have with my education is my procrastination. So if I'm constantly contributing to my own portfolio for networking and then other people's ideas, then it sort of will start to get me to stay more on top of it.
So if I look at here, you've got emerging, developing, proficient, extending.
I said emerging, because of the
absence from the network.
So the emerging is that I realize that it is something that could be very good for me, and I'm just starting to now try to implement it with limited success, but understanding where the full success.
Part of networking is you want to be engaged in the thing that you're engaged in, and so you take interest.
Yeah.
And networking works really well when other people appreciate what you've put up. Then you'll do more.
Yeah.
And if you notice on our forum, when people were acknowledging other people, they really, I really appreciate what you said, or when someone responded to someone else, someone that came back.
Yeah.
And it is that dialogue of, you said something that caused me to think differently.
Mm-hmm.
If you hadn't said that, I wouldn't have thought differently.
Yeah.
And then people start owning each other's learning because they actually are contributing to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part of networking is when you know a community, you start sending stuff to people that you know they would like, because they may not come across it. But I know Kieran enough that, I send him to TJ on soccer, he's going to love this.
Yeah.
Because you know that he's going to read it excitedly. Mm-hmm. Right? That's when networking really works.
Yeah.
Because then the right knowledge gets to the right people.
Yeah.
So what's your goal?
Twofold. It was the broad goal is to increase the use of technology as a vessel for networking.
Right.
But like I said, by both sharing my work and then paying attention to other people's work and what they like, and trying to engage myself in their interest in that one.
So what I would say, so you're using this as a whole artifact, is what you're saying in this first page?
Yeah. The other ones were more specific.
Right. What I would say to you to do is what's called curating, and is to start finding blogs that are saying things that you buy into, and make a page or start to collect those together. So if you have Twitter feed, for instance, Twitter feed is a way of creating lots of stuff that other people can see, but then you can come back because you can find it on your I tweeted it, and you can find it, and then you can.
To be honest with you, I don't have Twitter, but my mom does, and she follows a bunch of like coaching blogs, and she just forwards them to me. But I don't really get a chance to read them because I don't have Twitter.
Sign up for Twitter.
So I should probably need to do that.
Just sign up Twitter, see how it starts to work for you.
Yeah.
Because basically, in your feeds, it's just anybody you found is interesting. You scan your feed, and it says something else interesting.
Yeah.
Right, and then you pick up on that, and then the narrative keeps developing. Mm-hmm. So it's like you're causing a way of educating yourself.
Yeah.
Because people say stuff you like.
Yeah.
Right. Good. All right. But that would be you starting to think more like a professional than a student doing the work. Right. You mean you do this for me, but then you're doing it and thinking, okay, how could I apply this? So on this page, we went for your lesson sequencing is all here,
and then there's another PDF right above it, which is the rest of the curriculum plan. Which
cool. You navigate. You try. Take me down.
Yeah. So this actually ended up working better using page width. Yeah. So this has the rationale, which is actually on the first page.
This is you emerging it.
Yeah. And so this has the big ideas that obviously me and Harry outlined to be pretty important with our strength and conditioning unit, daily physical activity, part of the BC curriculum.
And these questions, do they emerge at the beginning, or do they come out as you're doing the unit?
So the first one definitely came out as we were doing the unit, because this is basically the question asked by the creation of their own workout program, or at least a part of it. Obviously, it didn't have much to do with the healthy eating and that kind of side of things, but how do we create and maintain an active lifestyle, most likely doing physical activity that we enjoy doing, or that we want to learn about. So that was part of that. The motivation was more brought out at the end in the forums quiz. They don't have the exact like broad spanning ideas of personal motivation to be the best they can be. It was more just a broad spanning motivation was we want to do physical activity because staying fit is good for us. Right. And then there's a few that answered with some amusing, so I'm not 600 pounds, so I can lift a couch if I want to move. Oh, okay.
So they wrote those things down. That's cool. But they're applying what you're teaching them to their everyday lives.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Exactly. And then obviously there's a couple boys like I think it was Christian. His name was Christian Alba. Yeah. His stuff is at the end, and because he got his dad to help him do like that really in depth workout plan. But obviously it was all him, and I'm pretty sure when he had his spare time to look at different stuff on YouTube, he was looking at like NFL Combine, Christian McCaffrey,
his idols, right?
Yeah, his idols. So I'm pretty sure he wants to be some sort of high level athlete.
Right.
So that was where he sort of transcended the rest of the group with.
And then he's applying it towards a sport, right?
Towards a sport,
Right.
yeah.
But the fact that they're actually thinking about their everyday lives was cool.
Mm-hmm.
They're actually applying.
Yeah.
So you came up with collaborative skills as the thing that this evidence, right?
Yeah, it was the collaborative partnership with Harry as I was focusing on
developing
that unit plan, because when we were doing it, I had a strong grasp of sort of the some of the questions, specifically the ones to do with
Go on.
the student activity. So what will they be doing to develop the competency skills? What will the lessons look like?
Right.
I happen to have a bit more experience with just looking at descriptions of lessons, whether they be session plans for a soccer session or whatnot. Whereas Harry had a good grasp on when we do an activity, what then relates to the CAPS, and then how we put it in the learning intentions and whatnot.
Cool.
And so it was sort of when we got together and we were both talking back and forth, one of us would say this, and then it would automatically sort of tie into the next column, and it sort of led down like that. And it ended up being a pretty smooth process by the end when we were creating lesson 4 and when we were touching this up again after we were done.
So that's really good to hear. I've got to give that feedback to Kerry and Dana, who created this form.
Yeah.
Because they created this form for the practicum, for you working with your cooperating teacher in order to work through the curriculum on your ideas.
Yeah.
So the way you've just described it is how they would hope you would work on a field experience with someone who's applying the curriculum and you're learning to apply it, but you're working through. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to tell her that was a very good. Right? So if you looked at collaborative skills then, where do you think you are in your professional learning of that? You talk about an open mindset, right? Yeah.
So I was saying I was probably at the development stage. I sync pretty well with Harry, and it was Harry in particular's ideas, keeping an open mind to to what he was saying to me. He had a lot of things thinking about things differently, even with the classroom management and dealing with the interpersonal stuff with the kids. Just different ideas coming from different backgrounds, obviously. So that was I got a couple new ideas from that side of things. Why I wasn't the third level.
Proficient was more informed literature.
Yeah. So developmental, because once again, with collaborative partnerships, when you do things to the highest standard before and early and get it out there and then have time to then discuss it just becomes that much more meaningful to both people, and obviously one person doesn't feel stressed out because they're doing this and their partnership isn't quite ready to do it, so then you have to get it in on a Sunday or whatever.
You would just start to figure that out.
Yeah.
And there's a tight timeline, right? Because we were basically Thursday, you'd get going, and then you'd have Friday, give it to me on Saturday, I'd give you comments, Sunday revise, teach it Monday.
Yeah.
But we actually started doing that really well. Because I had to be disciplined to do something, and it actually, I felt like I was actually collaborating with you, all of you as a pair, because my comments weren't for marks. My comments were, "Have you thought of this? I like this.
Yeah.
You should draw the freaking waste room properly, so that you can use it properly."
Yeah.
And then by the time you did draw it properly, it was actually, as Harry said, that lesson went so smooth.
Well, like I was going to say, even the lesson itself went smooth, but the lesson planning went smooth, because when we ended up doing that diagram, we both sort of looked at each other and laughed and said, "I'm pretty sure Tim's going to be happy with this one." And then everything else, like I was saying, our brains sort of worked on different realms. So he would sort of understand the caps, and whereas I would sort of go through the activities themselves and the rules that would be laid out and delivered to the kids.
Cool.
And so that was sort of, by the fourth lesson, got that diagram done, ran through the whole lesson plan, and it was easy. We were up in McKinnon for an hour, really, and it ended up being probably the most in-depth lesson plan for what it was. We had less to do because the kids were doing their thing, but...
And you combined lots of different things in that lesson, right? You had the technology, you had the warm-up with the dowels, and into the weights room, doing their own, giving feedback to each other, working around their own. I mean, there's a lot happening there that they could do that they couldn't have done when they first came.
Yeah.
So that was pretty evident of learning as well, that they were starting to feel comfortable in the weight room.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Third one. So one of the things that's just to people this one, this is you can use in the future, because it looks so good when you open this up. You haven't put this one in yet, right? And you have this showing, because it communicates to any reviewer, like, you plan with detail, you reflect with detail, you must be professional.
Yeah.
So rather than have them all shut down, or depending on how you speak to it, some people have opened up the first and the last, because they've spoken to how much better their planning got by the end.
Yeah. Okay.
So just think about how you want that to show when someone opens the page.
Yeah.
Because yes, retract is cool, but you can then show bits, and then people will play and see other bits.
Yeah. So the ones you want people to see first are the ones that
because and then it shows all the other work, because there's a ton of work on this page that in its own sense communicates to another professional. Yeah. These are real professionals. They know what they're doing. Yeah. Right? Because over time you build up a really good resource of thought process and planning. Yeah. And what did you choose for this one?
This one was planning skills, specifically in developing. I think I said it was lesson 3 and 4.
Right.
My own personal one when I had Taylor and Dennis as feedback, and then obviously planning one, which I just explained. It's sort of the planning process with Harry for the fourth one.
Good.
It was specifically planning, teaching styles and activities, and understanding why you do those things for what learning outcome.
Nice.
So for the fourth lesson, it was very apparent to both me and Harry when we were doing it, and obviously we had an inkling of it when we first came up with the idea of creating your own personal workout, that the agency over their own learning, and then the agency over their classmates' learning by teaching them something was the upper tier of what we were trying to get at for our four lesson mini unit. Yeah. So putting them into a scenario where obviously they get to take charge of their own learning, but then there's one piece of the BC curriculum that said engaging or promoting classroom and community physical health and well-being or something.
Your mum would like that one.
Yeah. Yes, she would. And that one resonated because we basically got the kids to take advantage of their own ability to do whatever they wanted, and then they sort of got to take the role of not just a peer doing their own workout, but this actual like promoter of physical activity in their classroom
to their peer. Yeah.
So they sort of got the experience of maybe being a strength and conditioning coach, or someone in that area of academia.
So they took up a role as well as their own personal fitness, right? So and those kids were very supportive of each other, right? They weren't trying to outdo each other. They they took up the idea of safety and appropriateness, and it's about your own personal goals.
Yeah.
So that also was framing that culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good. So what did you say is your goal for this one?
For this one is to create better, more detailed lesson plans.
Yeah.
Basically through the
Nice.
implementation of different of teaching styles,
Yeah.
as well as detailed outlines of the workspace.
Right.
Because obviously, like in lesson 4, and to an extent in lesson 3, but I felt that the more detailed lesson plan led to a smoother lesson, even just with the clip art. I mean, you don't even have the descriptions.
Yeah.
It's just the clip art of where everything is and more or less the size of where it is.
Yeah.
Sort of led to a smoother idea.
You distribute with the kids
And when we created that, me and Harry originally, because both of our individual lessons, because there was only us as the teacher, we more or less thought that we wanted all the kids in the one area of gym and not in using the hallway.
Right.
After doing the 4th lesson and seeing how much better it rotated when the kids were in the hallway and in the weight room, I would have said,
Right.
It doesn't matter if you can't see them all the time. You have non-weight bearing stuff in the hallway that you're not always being able to pay attention to, and then fewer groups around the machines and all the weights, and it would have just run way more smoothly for both of us.
Good. And that's using the space to be a teaching tool, because independency, can you trust them to work on the machine?
Yeah.
That's safe, is also part of the learning environment.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get to rotate in, and by the time they got 4th lesson, those kids were focused enough that you could leave them to do a task and come back to check.
Yeah.
Right? So they've learned to do a practice style, but also learned to give feedback when you're not around as well. Huge skills.
Yeah.
Right?
Another thing I had in this was plan to implement different styles and organize the group properly. So one of the feedbacks from Dennis about the ball tag was obviously less time on task because there's only one ball for 12 kids. If you made 2 balls or 2 separate groups with 1v5, that probably would have ended up being more time on task with more people running around, smaller grid, more warm up. So it was like recognizing that in my planning, but if I don't recognize it in my planning, always be thinking in my brain when I'm looking at my lesson, don't just have your lesson there and then just run through it.
Right.
Look at your lesson as you're going through it and have the wherewithal to go, this doesn't look like there's enough time on task. Shrink the grid, give 2 balls.
Yeah.
Right? And that takes 10 seconds, 15 seconds to do, but you're only going to do it if you're thinking throughout the whole lesson, how could I make this better? Are the things that I want in my lesson being...
So we have more clarity about what the purpose of the activity is for, and if the purpose is not happening, adjusting the structure to cause that purpose.
Yeah.
Which is then, like you said, shrink the space, increase the number of, reduce the number of kids, or have more balls, so that there's more activity.
Yeah.
Right? And those are the tools I've taught you, but now you're realizing the connection to achieving the outcomes that you're after.
Yeah.
And you're always manipulating. And that's why I think drawing is very important, because you actually see the constraints physically, the number of kids, the number of objects, the space they're in, and then you actually see that before you teach it.
Yeah.
Right? And you're more likely then to come up beforehand. What about this one?
So
got lots of great stuff happening here.
Yeah. So there's the assessment is the same one Harry has on his.
You got it nicely embedded now?
Yeah.
Good.
Got it nicely embedded, and then that's Christian's, and then
Whose dad helped him? That's the one.
I think so. Yeah. He said his stepdad gave him a hand, and I went, that is fantastic, dude. You went home and did that, and so I put that in. In its unfinished glory. Obviously, I outlined why I put it in on the side.
Yeah.
It was mostly for me, and this being my profile, to just recognize that after the first class, I knew maybe half the kids' names, and I wasn't really paying attention to how they developed on those different strategies or those different domains. The second one, obviously, I wasn't in class. Me and Harry talked briefly about it, and even he was saying it's tough when you're running the lesson by yourself for your first time doing that to then recognize, oh, that person has made a psychomotor development here, and then the cognitive development because they use the task cards particularly well, and you need to know all of them
enough to be able to
because you just need to glance at them and see them doing that, file it away, and then when you go for your reflection later, it's fine. So obviously, I had like a few reflections on the kids that I was most impressed with, and then the kids that were the biggest troublemakers, which is obviously what always happens. They're the ones that catch your attention the most. Reflecting on it weeks later now, I can probably give a few more ideas about the personal effective stuff just because I can think back. Like Timothy, the personal effective, like he's a very, very quiet guy, but when he got into the upper body workout with me and then his own workout in the fourth class, he was, going from machine to machine, proper form, understanding what he's done, right? And then he started to feel a bit more comfortable with his classmates and whatnot, and then he was teaching. So
this was a really. I made this up, and I knew it was a good idea at the time.
Yeah,
it worked really, really well because all of you did exactly what you were describing. You started to see every single individual kid.
Yeah.
In relation to your objectives. Your objectives got better because you started to try and look for them. Mm-hmm. So you wrote your objectives better, but you saw each of your kids. And you probably started thinking about the big ideas now. I can see how I'm starting to feed towards the big idea.
Yeah.
This little behavior by this kid indicates this. That was good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to keep that form because it worked so well at the right moment. It was just at the right moment.
And to be honest with you, you start thinking about it for every kid. And even if you don't write them all down in every column, you're still thinking about it and manipulating your lessons to account for it.
Once you can get to the stage where you can think about every kid's story in your lesson planning will become infinitely better because you know how each kid can help other kids.
Yeah.
You start using them as a resource, so it's less about you and more about the resource of the class causing the learning.
Yeah.
And that's the Boston ideal, right? Because we're using teaching styles to create the skills in the kids, to create the environment to help each other learn.
Yeah.
When they leave the class and you're not around, they should still be able to give appropriate feedback to help someone or adjust the environment to make it more inclusive. Mm-hmm. So what did you put down here as your key skill?
Assessment. Implementing assessment into lessons, not as a tool of assessment, but a tool of creating knowledge to then change lessons and raise the level of learning for the students.
Nice. That quote I gave you, right? From Black and William?
Yeah.
It's exactly, that's their theory of formative assessment. Mm-hmm. All assessment should be creating better learning conditions. So the teacher gets to become a better teacher and the kids get a better understanding of how to create a better learning environment.
Yeah.
For themselves and each other.
So, and I mean, for PE, it's almost nice to experience that first before any other subject because it's easier to grasp, obviously, from someone who grew up not with that idea. Even my generation did not grow up with that idea of assessment in our schooling, right? It was you were assessed not to increase the standard of your learning. You're assessed because you just need to be assessed and graded and classified and ranked. And I mean, I went to St. Michael's. I loved it. It was a great school. I had great teachers, but they ranked the shit out of you, to be honest. Right? They ranked.
And then they make sure your parents pay for it.
Exactly. And I mean, don't get me wrong. There's things that are done better with the classroom sizes and the ability to be individual with the students. And I actually prefer a linear plan rather than a semester system. But in this scenario, not once did I make my boys run 3 laps and time them, and you have to get this time on the run, or you have to, be able to do a squat.
But you were teaching them to
fail.
goal set based on what they wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly. So it was, the assessment was basically, I got the information because they assessed themselves and their peers on how well they were doing something. So I got to see how well they'd improve. And then I also got to see how well they teach, how well they learn, and then I got to do the summative sort of.
And what I liked about here is, because you created your own work, but this whole notion of how comfortable they felt, how much they enjoyed, right?
Yeah.
These are the responses you got. So there was a really a strong sense of they were enjoying what they were doing, and they were feeling more and more capable in the environment that you put them in. So their confidence in relation to weights was increasing, and they were putting in effort to understand what they were learning without a number, because they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Not doing it by number, which is a very different notion of learning. So where would you put your, first of all, your rating? Because I'm reading it here and I'm sort of, you definitely were applying multiple different forms of assessment, and I think you were starting to demonstrate how assessment can be used to gather instruments to improve the learning conditions and the ability to teach. So you're moving to a proficient.
So for lesson 4, I would say I was definitely moving towards proficient.
Yeah, I think this page is very good. For me to see, this is the first time you taught kids from school.
Yeah.
And to be able to do this would be pretty impressive to anyone looking at, my God, you already did this in four lessons.
Yeah.
So, and I think this Google form got you and Harry really thinking about kids' thoughts and kids. And the thing about the form is that kids see it, makes it really official, makes it permanent. Mm-hmm. And because you did it on a Google Doc, so that it's actually repeated measure, the document, you could actually have built this up for a whole term.
Yeah.
And the kids would have looked at that document and then done a summative assessment. Or what you just said, they would have then articulated.
Yeah.
That's assessment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how well Kieran's pushing weights more than me, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
I know how to do weights for what I want. That's the goal. And that's the active lifestyle goal as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great. Good.
Yeah.
Any last comment before I ask you my last 2 questions? But I will tell you, your lesson planning and your assessment pages really speak raw volumes. So I would use those if you ever go for a job.
Yeah. funny enough, the academy I coach for just sort of not folded but shifted. So you know Pacific FC, obviously the professional soccer team in town that's up at West Hills. They're now taking over their basically developmental system. So their Trident program from U9 to U12, and then Vancouver Island Wave, or the HBL program, which was run by Lower Island Soccer, will now be run under Pacific, but EPHE is they are the guiding hand behind that. Obviously for the boys side, there's going to be, I think the assistant coach for Pacific will be also involved in that, but it could be that I am applying to a job at...
If you're going to do that, there's 2 things. If you do an interview and you can log in, you can do what you've done with me.
Yeah.
If you want to send it to them, you'd need to embed this into your Google. So take the stuff from your Google, make a copy of it in your personal Gmail, and then just re-embed it, so then it will play publicly. Then you can share it 2 ways. I don't know if I can get it here. Where's your edit? Back to here. There's Kieran. If you go, I don't know if you learn how to share, right? So if I'm on here, why can't I see the edit button? What have you done that's confusing me here?
Or is it because you're logged in? Or is it, no, it is me.
It is you, right?
Yeah.
Let's go here.
Oh, I can't edit it because I submitted it to you.
That's why, right.
Yeah. But I did see, I saw the share button in the right corner.
So you can do share button, and video will show you can share just a link.
Yeah.
Like a YouTube link.
Yeah.
And you can share that for just a period of time. So then doesn't get circulated outside your control.
Oh, okay.
So they can see it for a week and then it will expire.
Yeah.
But that's the way in which you can send it prior to an interview for them to look at it.
Yeah.
And then what happens is they ask you questions in relation to it, which gives you a better concrete framework rather than abstract questions.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how you could use it for that type of interview. Great. So the other question I got for you is, in the course, what was the key highlight for you?
The key highlight for me, as in, it was definitely the teaching the 4 units. Had to be.
4 lessons, yeah.
Or yeah, the 4 lessons. Yeah, that was 100% it. It was the something that I'm very comfortable with and not familiar with at all, and it was just thrown at us with. We had some experience, or not experience, but we had some
tools,
some groundwork done, but the learning went from lesson 1 where it was, both me and Harry, and it was like, almost no one was there. And then it went to, you get to evaluate someone else doing it, or for me, because I evaluated first, you get to look at someone else doing their solo lesson. To be honest with you, I even told Harry, I went, dude, I had the better deal than you, because I got to do the first lesson, watch someone do a lesson by themselves, and then combine the issues with those two, and then go into my individual lesson. And so it was sort of funny to just see the progression. And then obviously by the 4th lesson, it was as if I had stepped on the field to coach. It was that comfortable, right?
Nice.
And so it made me excited about teaching in general, as it was continuing coaching or going into TV, because it was fun, and I like working with kids that age.
Yeah, and I think the number was just right. And the thing that I lucked out on, I can claim it's a plan now, but having that extra holiday in between where you taught a lesson and there was a 2-week gap and then you taught the second one, that was perfect.
Yeah,
because you had 2 lessons to think through your plans, and that made a huge improvement. That's why we got the assessment thing in, right? That chart came into your lesson before, and you all started thinking more specifically about kids. And I did it so you learn their names, but then also did it so you think about your objectives in more concrete terms.
Yeah.
It worked pretty well. I couldn't have got that assessment lesson in if I hadn't got a gap, right?
Yeah.
Because then I helped with the teaching, planning, and then I could do the assessment before you taught again. I realised that made a huge difference. It's funny, just that timing, because you weren't able to take that up until you'd gone through a thinking process prior to that.
Yeah.
So what would you like to develop more in the class? What would be something you would either change or want to enhance or change or develop? Things like the quizzes that I did outside the class rather than in class, the use of technology,
I don't mind the quizzes being outside of class at all, actually. That I think worked quite well for everyone, as well as the just taking it until you
passed it. Harry's my example. Took it 4 times and then he aced everyone after that.
Exactly. So that part was good. I would maybe say that in the course outline, or at least in the beginning of the year, highlight helpful. You outlined helpful resources, so you had the BC curriculum, but maybe even further stuff like helpful, hints. Not hints as to do your forums on time, because that's pretty obvious. But technological stuff, you did highlight how good it would be to have diagrams that are really, really nice in the lesson. Took me and Harry 4 lessons to get it. Probably took some other people less lessons to get it. Me and Harry seemed to be the 2 people who particularly didn't enjoy or didn't use stuff
You had to draw the weights room, and it was complex, and so you didn't do it. I was trying to think how I could get you to draw that rather than me just doing. I was going to do it for you until you actually did it. I actually did it for Bill and Brett because they didn't, and then because they drew the whole thing wrong. I said, no, the freaking courts are this way, and the climbing wall's over here.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, then they planned better because when they put stations in, it's all set up, right? Yeah, and you don't screw up because you know where to locate stuff, space appropriately. But it is interesting, and I have to. People have to be ready to learn how to do diagrams. Mm-hmm. You've got there, and I've realised I can show people that don't do it. Like I did in Singapore with teachers there, and as soon as I did the diagrams, they all went, brilliant! Every teacher started drawing diagrams, but they taught for 20 years and never drawn diagrams.
Yeah.
Right? But suddenly someone did it, and it overcame a lot of issues that they recognised they had when they taught. And it's just a new tool, right?
Yeah, and I mean, maybe I'm not entirely right with the tips because sometimes with those 4 teaching lessons, they're meant to be a learning experience.
Yeah.
So you go into the first 2 with not good diagrams, and then the lesson doesn't turn out as smooth as you'd like, and then you do the good diagrams for the last 2, and it ends up being much smoother. It's like you could. Beat a dead horse saying how good they are, and all of us could go, oh, shut up, and we don't need diagrams. And then as soon as you're standing in front of kids and you're stuttering over stuff because you can't figure it out, you're like, oh, okay, that's why it works.
The other one that worked, I hadn't planned it, but I just put it in because I realised it, was that Tim's Tech Time class, so you had the points for your team to do as many technology you can.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that again because that worked so well. Like Emma did everything.
Yeah.
Harry said, I suddenly learned how to use Google Forms because I tried it out. It was interesting way of, I dabbled in all of them, but they just gave you go.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting one for me to see because I let go of me trying to show you how to do it all.
Yeah.
But just gave you enough.
I remember I spent the entire time doing my golf swing next to the
Emma, she talks about that all the time.
Yeah.
She says, that was the best thing I ever learned, she said.
Yeah.
Because I never realised you could use the iPad as a self-check. And then I learned to do golf for Kieran because we were analysing and I could help him by looking at his stroke.
Yeah.
So, and that's why she used it in the taekwondo, the same thing. Because she just, her first thing she wanted to do was do that in taekwondo, and then she built the rest of the lesson around it. All she wanted to do was to put up a video that you could compare it to.
Well, to be honest with you, it's like I really like golf, and that I got to both practice my swing, and then instead of having a freaking instructor that costs $100 an hour, I have an iPad in the stand, and then professional golf swings side by side with me going slow motion. Can go back, change it up. Like the video of the woman, like the female golfer swinging, was way better. Partly because they don't have as much like muscle and clothing.
You got the soccer stiffness in your lower body, so you couldn't get that rotation, right?
Exactly. So like you see them doing that so well, and then you look at myself and I can't get my arms straight across my body, right? Because my hips don't move properly. It's going, okay, well I guess to be a good golfer, I'm gonna have to start going to yoga.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good. Any last comments?
Nope.
Great.
Yeah, that was a bit more of a struggle